Ontario has an abundance of lakes, rivers, and forests. Early settlers were awed by the area's beauty and what seemed like limitless trees, clean water, fish, and wild game. Today, we know that limits do exist and that it takes action now to ensure that future generations can enjoy the riches our country has been blessed with. Here in Lanark County, a number of organizations have been active since 1979 in spawning bed construction and rehabilitation. Our goal is to enhance natural reproduction of walleye in lakes and rivers where walleye are currently present, but where habitat needed for spawning has deteriorated or could be enhanced. With this video, we would like to share some of our experiences. Rivers and creeks that are tributaries to lakes with walleye are the most effective locations for spawning beds because the flowing water washes metabolic wastes away from the developing eggs. Stream spawning sites are generally located downstream of rapids, in swifts, and along the edges of reefs. Here, on the Mississippi River, we were rehabilitating an old spawning bed that had been constructed in 1979. First, we placed a silt screen downstream from the work area. This screen is meant to prevent silt from washing downriver while work proceeds on the spawning bed. Silt screens are mandatory for any site that you want to construct or rehabilitate. Once the screen was in place, the old spawning bed was removed. The bed had silted in and was overgrown with vegetation. This may have been because cement structures were impeding the natural flow of the water. Next, we brought in the rocks. Before placing them in the water, we made sure that they were clean. Washing of rocks can be done on-site, but stay back far enough from the shore to avoid runoff into the water body. These rocks had already been washed at the source, so we didn't need to do it again. Before distributing the new rocks, the hi-ho operator created a rock road on which to travel back and forth. This was important to prevent stirring up the substrate and causing siltation downstream while the new spawning bed was being created. Once the work was done, the rock road was removed. How the rocks are distributed is very important for the ultimate success of the project. Small and mid-sized rocks, ranging from 4 to 12 inches in diameter, should be placed to provide crevices where developing fish eggs are protected from predation. A few large boulders, 3 to 4 feet in size, should be randomly placed to provide resting areas for fish spawning in the fast-flowing springtime waters. The spawning bed should be deep enough to allow for water level fluctuations. Fish spawn needs to remain submerged during the incubation and hatching period and must be well oxygenated in order to hatch successfully. At this site on the Mississippi, the spawning bed is adjacent to a bridge. In order to bring in heavy equipment for moving the rocks down to the water, we had to close off one side of the road. This meant bringing in a certified flag person to direct traffic. One thing to keep in mind is that no matter how large or small the project, permits are always required before work can begin. The number of volunteers and the equipment required will depend on the location and the type of access to the spawning bed. The basic process, however, always remains the same. Having a crane here was a huge help because the rocks had to be placed in a large area extending out quite far from the bridge. Having big machinery on the job cut back on volunteer labor and made the work easier and quicker, but it added substantially to the overall cost of the project. Not all sites require the use of heavy equipment. The least costly rehabilitation projects are those in small creeks or rivers with easy access. Here, you can do all the work by hand. You would, however, need more volunteers. In large lakes, or in lakes lacking inflowing or outflowing streams, walleye may spawn on the wave-washed shores of islands or on the mainland. They may also spawn on mid-lake shoals. While late summer, when water levels are low, is a good time for most spawning bed work. Mid-lake shoal projects are best carried out in the winter. Rehabilitating or constructing a new spawning bed in winter provides its own challenges. Here, on Patterson Lake, the spawning bed is on a mid-lake shoal. This meant transporting rocks over a long stretch of ice. Before this could happen, snow and ice depths had to be checked and a safe path marked from the shore to the work site mid-lake. We chose a day in mid-February to place the rocks. Volunteers arrived on snowmobiles and ATVs drawing homemade sleds. Old car hoods were particularly effective for skidding the rocks out to the spawning site. Other volunteers were out at the spawning site helping to distribute rocks evenly over the area. Come spring, the rocks fall through the ice and form the walleye spawning bed. Care needs to be taken to ensure that they are at least 2 feet below the summer water levels of the lake. The success of spawning beds on lakes relies on the scouring action of waves over developing eggs. If a spawning site is located near shore, it must be open to prevailing winds and waves. With the work completed, all that's left to do is monitor the beds for spawning activity in the following years. It's also a good idea to periodically check on the spawning beds to ensure that they remain silt and algae free.